Hey everybody, we're here to introduce the next release of Crunchy Red Fruit. This is November 2021. This release is called Learn Your Scales, and this is about wines that come from classic regions that are being reinterpreted by talented, sometimes young, sometimes old, but very forward-thinking winemakers who are couching in tradition, but understanding that to innovate and to push forward, you need to experiment, you need to try new things, and you need to reinterpret the old rules. And I'm really a fan of the wines that we're putting in this release. We're almost 2 years into Crunchy Red Fruit. We have never run this business not in a pandemic. It's been the reality pretty much the whole time. So we're still super, super grateful for your support because we need it. And to keep this thing going, we need people like you to take our boxes, try them out, and enjoy them. So thanks for being here with us. This first wine is from a winery in Champagne. This is the first time we've put a champagne into our box. This is J. La Salle, also known as Jules La Salle. This winery was started in 1942. And this is a bit of a phenomenon in Champagne. We call it grower champagne or farmer fizz or RM champagne, which stands for Récoltant Manipulant. These are people who not only farm their own vineyards and own their own vineyards, but they then make their wine from those vineyards. Back in the day in Champagne, you used to sell your wines and your grapes off to a big co-op or a big firm, and they would make the wine for you. Even if you were a farmer and you had great vineyards, you often didn't make your own champagne. They're doing the opposite. They are farming and making everything from their own property, and it's really awesome. This winery has been run by 3 generations of women since 1982. The granddaughter of Jules La Salle is currently running the winery and kicking ass, and the wines are so delicious. This is an off-dry champagne. It's brut, so definitively dry, but there is just a hint of roundness and a hint of ripeness on the palate. It's got a lot of golden apple and quince. It's just delicious. It finishes lean and dry. This is perfect with popcorn, great with caviar and chips, great with white meats. Like you could do roast chicken with this. I think it's tremendous. So this is my palate cleanser, and I'm going to finish this, and we're going to get on with the rest of the tasting. The next wine we have is also from France. This is a little bit of a French heavy box because I think more than anything, France represents a place that's both learned to embrace tradition, but also to push itself forward and try new things. And that's what's happening in a lot of wine regions. This is Bois d'Arlennes, La Comtesse Blanc. Really beautiful pastoral countryside label on here. This is their 2019 vintage of a white blend. It's Vermentino, and you also have Viognier, and you also have Picpoul in here. All southern French grapes that are really textury and silky and rich, but also finish really bright and clean. You get the aromatics of Viognier here, and you get that richness and weight and a touch of bitterness, like peach pit bitterness. Otherwise, it finishes totally clean. I love this wine. Pair this with fish, halibut, or any kind of freshwater fish, catfish, things like that would be an awesome pairing. Great. My friends Tom and Kate make this wine in Oregon. This is called Going Places. And this is a Pinot Noir coming from the Willamette Valley. Their winery, Division Wine Company, was in Portland for a long time. They're now back in the Willamette Valley. When I'm looking for Oregon Pinot Noir, I want it to have a few things. I want it to have really great lifted aromatics and lots of red fruit, so lots of cherries and raspberries. And I want it to have a touch of that forest floor, that pine, that cedar tree. And I think this wine encapsulates that in a really good way. I'm drinking it out of a white wine stem, but you definitely would want to drink it out of a bowl glass, something bigger to express the aromas. I also find with this wine, you need about an hour for it to kind of wake up and get there. So if you want to decant it, go for it. Pinot Noir is not typically a grape we decant a lot of, but this is one that I think merits it. It's a 2016 vintage, really good vintage for Oregon, something that has a good match of structure, but also finesse and elegance. And this wine is very clean on the palate. It's bright and it finishes tart, but with lots of good weighty fruit. To me, if I was going to pair food with this, roast chicken is kind of the sine qua non of Pinot Noir food pairing. You can't go wrong, especially during the fall when you just have cold weather outside. You want to hunker down, you want to roast a chicken, maybe some root vegetables. I think this wine's absolutely delicious. So that's 2016 Going Places Pinot Noir. Next up, we have a wine made by another young female winemaker. This is called 26, and she was literally 26 when she started this winery. So look it up on the site. We have all the information about Avignonesi, which is the winery that her mom runs, and then we have 26, which is her own project. She actually started a wine bar and a winery, a wine bar in Antwerp, Belgium, and a winery in the same year. And this is in the Montepulciano region of Tuscany. So that means it's Sangiovese based. When I think of Sangiovese from Tuscany, I think of the first thing when I get my nose in the glass is not going to be fruit, and it's not the case here either. Before you even get to the fruit that's underneath this wine, you encounter fennel and marjoram and sage and all these sort of cooking herbs. When I think about Tuscan wine, it's like walking into a kitchen with all the stuff hanging from the rafters. Dried garlic and strands of rosemary and sage drying over an open hearth. And that's kind of what I feel evoking when I smell this wine. Buried beneath that is tart red fruit, cranberry and cherry. And this wine does have a tiny kiss of Merlot, about 4.5% Merlot. And that helps kind of round out, soften the bite of Sangiovese, because Sangiovese is a shrill, bright, tart grape. And Merlot is there to kind of give it some velvet, give it some softness. And that's why I love the blending of those two grapes in this wine. This is the 2016 26 from Montepulciano, or Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, which is the highest appellation in that part of Tuscany. We have another French wine here. This is called Moncoeur, and it is from Jean-Louis Chave Selections. Now, this name, Jean-Louis Chave, is the operative important term here. Jean-Louis Chave makes some of the world's most expensive wines at his home estate in Hermitage, France, in the Northern Rhone Valley. The Northern Rhone Valley is where the Syrah grape runs supreme and reigns supreme. And it is a fine example of a long-lived, beautiful, statuesque Syrah. The JL Shop Selections, which this wine is their what we call negociant label. They are contracting with farmers to create awesome wines, and that they basically will stipulate organic farming and very strict farming practices to the people they buy their grapes from. And then they'll get to make the wine with the fruit that they want to make it with, even if they don't own those vineyards themselves. So this is called Negociant Project, and the quality is optimum. It's really beautiful. This is a Côte d'Aron, so it means the base grape is Grenache here, and the rest of it's going to be a little Syrah and a little Mourvèdre. When I smell Southern French wine, we have a concept called garrigue. Garrigue is a term in Southern France for everything around the vineyard. It's the scrub brush, it's the flowers, it's the things that grow naturally there. And a lot of people say you smell it in the wines. I certainly think you do. It's lavender, rosemary, herb de Provence, black pepper, all those things that occur around the vineyards, you kind of sense that in the final wine. We're also in a warm climate here, warm Mediterranean climate. So you have ripe red fruit, raspberry, sometimes raspberry jam, ripe strawberries, and that's all married to this smoke and pepper and spice. The wine that we chose to pair with this was, or the food that we chose to pair was a cassoulet. Cassoulet is like a rich bean stew, and you can put all sorts of different meats in there. You could put game, you could put sausage, you could put pork belly, and it's a very rich, warming, hearty kind of winter food. I recommend you try making one. You put breadcrumbs over the top and you can break the crust. It's so delicious. This wine screams cassoulet. It screams Southern French cooking. So hope you enjoy the JL Chave selections there. Lastly, we kind of have our big gun here. We wanted to do a wine that had 12 years of bottle age on it, something that are really starting to show you what a great classic wine from a classic region can look like when it's started to have some bottle age and develop. So this is the 2009 Sierra Cantabria Rioja Gran Reserva. And Gran Reserva Rioja has to spend a couple years in oak, a long time aging before you can even release it. So this wine wouldn't have even legally been able to be released until about 6 years ago. So they need to undergo a fair amount of oak aging to even be viable to release, to call it Gran Reserva. Sierra Cantabria is farming completely organically. These are all estate vineyards that they are purchasing from. They are looking for purity of fruit and the fruit we're talking about here is the Tempranillo grape. And this wine is 97% Tempranillo with 3% of another local grape called Graciano. The Tempranillo is the star here. You have the dustiness and the dryness and the sour cherry note that Tempranillo brings. But because it's spent some time in new American oak barrels, you also have this wonderful underlying spice. Rioja to me is like a leather jacket on the backseat of an 80s sedan that's been smoked in. And yes, it sounds a little gross, but it is an evocative thing. It's got this lived-in, storied feel to it. It feels like an anti-hero from a pulp novel. Like this is a wine that has a story to tell, and it kind of comes into the room and you notice it, and there's kind of a waft of mystery and smoke around it. And that's what aged Rioja kind of does to me. It's a wine that has this really romantic, sort of intense vibe to it, and it's brooding, and it's kind of angular, and you're not sure if it wants to be your friend right up front. But once you get into it, once you get a sip of it, the wine kind of presents itself to you. It's really cool. You definitely are going to get that sour cherry up front. You're going to get dry, dusty earth and spice. And there's an exotic spice here that's part of what it's like to age wine on American oak. It's not the vanilla and the baking spice of French oak. It's a little curry. It's a little cardamom pod. It's turmeric. It's things that are a little bit more eccentric and expressive spice-wise. So this wine's really cool. This is definitely one of those ones we committed to early just because we wanted to have old Rioja in the box because it's really cool. I really hope you enjoy all these wines. If you have any questions, you can always email us. If you want to pair some food with it, the pairing we chose for this year at Cantabria was Ottolenghi's lamb shawarma, and it's done in a Jerusalem style. Lots of sumac and black pepper and spice. It's really awesome. It'll be a killer pairing with this Rioja. But thank you for listening. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy these wines. Cheers.